Now I'm speaking. I want to share with you one experience when I was trying to do my Magister in Hamburg. I was trying to edit the Chittapada Patala of the Buddhist of the Bhumi. And there is a text line which says, Atikula Dui-3 and Kula Putra, like these terms are mentioned in this certain line. And immediately following that, there's of course like Bodhisattva. And usually I am of the conviction that we have to be aware that the text and the context, text can be seen only in a special historical cultural context. And let us assume that this text was composed or compiled in the 4th century. And we are living in the 21st century with our notion of political correctness, gender equality, and so on. So I was taught in Hamburg not to project or try to project our 21st century values to a text that comes from a 4th century text, presupposing they should know better than us already in the 4th century, is kind of unfair, so to say. But nonetheless, I thought I was justified to be politically correct there. And because there was explicitly mentioned Kula Putra and Kula Dui-3, I just say he or she. And my professor, he got mad. Because he thought, now I'm bringing this political correctness to trying to project my correctness into the text, which the text didn't mean. Bodhisattva is always masculine, sorry. Yeah? It is masculine. We don't have a feminine Bodhisattva or something like that. So, I think this is a kind of a perfect example. If I were trying to say he or she, or make a feminine out of Bodhisattva, then I'm kind of intruding and distorting the context and the text. So this at least is seen as we should not be trying to do that. But making clear that these texts come from a completely different time, with a different presuppositions and so on, but not necessarily implying that I agree with their way of thinking and so on. I think this has to be. I think these are some of the methodological issues that we do have to consider. So be aware that we should try to understand the culture as best as possible, but not to project our own presuppositions on the text. So I hope that with that I more or less.
To work a little bit on this issue, very important issue indeed of Sakya here. And to point maybe something that has not been discussed very much today is the inherent plurality of transmission even of given texts. And for many texts, for example sutras, be they Agama or Mahayana sutras, there is actually not such thing as a text. And just to give an example, so Professor Scharf was mentioning before the case of the Ashtashastrika, which we can reach in Chinese in many versions. One, the earliest being Lokachema. So Lokachema's version is actually very close to a New Gandhari version that has been now edited provisionally by Professor Falk, and which is a 1st century manuscript found in Gandhara, but also produced in the Greater Gandhara. And from the 2nd century AD, so 1 century just after, there is an early Prakritum Sanskrit Brahmi manuscript of the Ashtashastrika, which is almost identical to the one that is found in later Nepalese texts. So there is, even synchronically, there is a plurality of consumptions, of diffusions of text in various textual shapes. And other good examples that have been given, for example, by Gregory Chopin about the Vaisheshika Guru, and he pointed out, like for example in Gilgit, you have various versions of this text, or various texts of related to this figure of Vaisheshika Guru circulating contemporaneously. So the way we might actually be dealing with this when you are fortunate enough to have various versions is to also assess in a different manner the way, in a kind of, sorry to use a French expression, longue durée, so long duration assessment of the manuscript transmission in Sanskrit of text that have came down to us. So, for example, in case of Ashtastika, we can compare what is preserved of this Brahmi manuscript with later, for example, Bala manuscript, and being aware of this kind of big temporal lag that there is, that is very present, and we need also to be some kind of archaeologist of the text somehow, to be able to see the way the text was composed and the lag existing between the final point of the text and the actual shape of the text, which we can read in manuscript. While there is, of course, another problem with translation, which is this kind of rupture in the continuity process. So, of course, with Chinese translation, we have images of text produced at a certain period. It is very precious for historical approach. But they also were some kind of domestication of the text and reinterpretation of the text that we need to assess somehow. And yeah, so it's a very, very ambitious attempt to study this text, and very few are the people in the world who actually can read Prakrit, Chinese, Tibetan, Sanskrit.
I think these are very important points that you raised, and I think all of us engaged in the study of Buddhism we should take your points. And if I understood it correctly, we have to have a view of not only a diachronic sort of view, but also a synchronic, which may not always be, may not always correlate. And also the value of early Chinese translation. I mean, nobody can undermine, I think, the value of Chinese translation, particularly because the Chinese tradition is so good in dating. Right? Because when you talk about higher or textual criticism, we're really thinking of like when to date, like how to date the work, the authorship, and so on. And Chinese, particularly the dating of Indian works, particularly scriptures, Buddhist scriptures, and so on, is so difficult. And Chinese translations can be of immense value for understanding the development of a text, like history of the text, and also history of a work as such, and how it developed. I think these are very important points that we will have to bear in mind. So we have a few minutes, so I want to give it to you.
Just as kind of concluding suggestion, what I thought was coming from Reverend Dhammi's reference to this advice to these 2 monks who wanted to translate into Chandas, and also your conclusion based on that. I think it's important for us to include the session on philosophy of transmission and translation in this kind of session, because ultimately, the whole need and the shape of the transmission and translation, the coming out from how the originator of this tradition viewed the whole thing. As you rightly mentioned, there is no inhibition of putting this teaching into various vernaculars or local languages from the very beginning. And also I remember this Anguttara Nikaya statement, Sabbang Subhasitan Buddhavachanam Eva. So when it comes to the whole problem of what is the word of the Buddha, the highly debated thing, so the tradition was that everything well said is the word of the Buddha. So which gives us such a huge elasticity to the whole concept. So there is no, in fact, you can even say that the origin of a concept is not really important so long as it fits into the soteriological scheme of the teaching. So that way, I think, because I'm fascinated by the sense of people have, translators have, towards the precision and the unearthing the so-called original the textual traditions. With all the due deference for all these scholarly work, at the same time the philosophy has to be more like to transmit not the form but the content, the more important thing. So anyway, suggestion is also to have some aspect or some session on philosophy of translation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the time is running out. Thank you very much, every one of you. Sorry, some panelists didn't talk much, or not at all. And thank you very much. I myself very much enjoyed for your active participation, and I think this was a very good final appropriate remark that Supashita or Suvukta is Buddha Vashita, right? I mean, and this argument has been indeed used by Mahayana scriptures to legitimize, to justify the authenticity of their sutras, including the Angulimala Sutra. I think this citation, this kind of a thing you might find, this argument, find in several Tathagata sutras. So I think you have all well said, so your teachings are as valuable as Buddha Vajna. So thank you very much for your participation, and yes, we'll close this session.
Here I am to introduce Professor A.P. Dec-2012, who actually needs no introduction in this campus. Usually it is said it is my proud privilege, but I really mean it when I say it is my proud privilege to introduce Dr. A.P. Dec-2012. We have seen him personally guiding very keenly so many students for PhD as well as for MA by research, which is possible in Mumbai University. Basically, he comes from Dhule, a particular region in Maharashtra, where he was teaching Sanskrit for a long time. So he is basically a Sanskritist, turned into archaeologist. And then he joined Department of Archaeology. At present he is the director of KJ Somaya Center for South and Southeast Asian Studies. He also was a director of Archaeological Survey of India of Maharashtra region, and he has a long association over a decade with KJ Somaya Center for Buddhist Studies as visiting faculty as well as research tech. I request Dr. Dec-2012 to chair this particular session and to introduce the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind words. So very glad. Today I am here in place of Dr. K.V. Ramesh, my revered good friend, who is not able to be here because of bad health. And therefore, when the organizers requested me, I said that well, it is a very good thing to sit as a chairperson, because then you only comment and receive a lot of knowledge. So I am looking forward to that experience. So may I request now, first, Professor Chirapat Prapanda Vidya, to read his paper on syncretism of Buddhism with Shaivism. as shown in some select inscriptions found in Thailand and Cambodia. Professor Chirapat Prapandavidya is presently advisor to the Sanskrit Studies Center, Silpakorn University, Bangkok, and associate fellow, Royal Institute of Thailand, Bangkok. He has had a long association with the Faculty of Archaeology and Sanskrit Studies Center at Silpakorn University. He was awarded an honorary doctorate degree from Mahaj Chula Longkorn Vidyalaya University, Bangkok in 2010, and Vidya Vachaspati, that is D.Litt degree, honoris causa from the Rashtriya Sanskrit Sansthan in 2012. Professor Chirapat Prapandavidya.
Venerable member of the Sangha, distinguished scholar, first of all, and respected chairperson, first of all, I would like to thank the Somaya Center for Buddhist Studies and others organizers for inviting me to have a chance to participate in this conference. So I'm reading my paper. The earliest Indianized kingdom of Indochina, known by the Chinese as Funan, was founded in about 1st century CE by a Brahman Kaudindya. After having married female ruler of the land named Soma, or Lidia in the Chinese account, evident by the Chinese account and by inscription, Shaivism, Vaishnavism and Buddhism coexisted in the kingdom during the reign of King Kaudindya Jayavaraman II and Rudravaraman. Buddhism that existed in Funan during the reign of both the kings was Theravada, the new Sanskrit, and it was flourishing during the reign of Rudravaraman, as suggested by the history of Liang, which state that Chinese embassy was sent to Funan between 335 and 545 to ask the kingdom of this country to collect Buddhist texts and to invite him to send Buddhist teacher to China. The king of Funan showed the Indian Paramaratha or Unaratna of Ujjayini, who was then living in Funan for this mission. He arrived in China in 546, bringing 240 bundles of texts with him. Funan must have ceased to exist after Rudravaraman, as it was conquered by Pavavarman I, who founded a new kingdom known by the Chinese as Jela. Buddhism was probably abolished from the country by Pavavarman I or Chitrasena, his cousin, as both of them were zealous adherents of Shaivism, as suggested by the account given by Yi Jing, the Chinese pilgrim, at the end of 7th century. The inscription number K978 of 6th century, discovered at a village named Ban Vieng Pai, Wang Pai, Ampere Vichianburi, Phetchabun Province, Thailand, indicates that Pavavarman's territory extended to that part of Thailand. Funan must have ceased to exist. Sorry. It tells us that Pavavarman, who was grandson of celebrated Chakravartin and son of celebrated Prithvindra Varman erected images of Shiva at the time of his becoming king. After him, as evident by inscription, most part of northeastern Thailand seemed to be under the rule of Chitrasena. Varman's cousin, whose name after coronation was Mahendra Varman. An inscription of 6th century on the